Tonight, you are sleeping aboard a pirate ship carrying a fortune. Somewhere beyond the darkness lies the coast of New England. The men around you believe that the worst of their journey is already behind them. But before the sun rises, the ship beneath your feet will be gone. The treasure will vanish into the Atlantic. And of all the men sleeping, drinking, working, and keeping watch aboard her tonight, only 2 will leave the sea alive. The ship is called the Whydah. For more than 2.5 centuries after this night, no one will know exactly where she rests. Her cannons will lie beneath shifting sand. Her coins will turn black beneath the water, and the bell carrying her name will remain silent on the ocean floor. But that is still many hours away, for now the ship is alive, and you are aboard her. You do not need to remember every date or hold on to every name. The story will continue whether you remain awake or slowly drift away. You may simply listen to the sea, follow the lantern light across the deck, and allow the ship to carry you north. I will keep watch. The night is Friday, the 26th of April, 1717. Around you, the Atlantic is almost completely dark. There are no lights along this part of the horizon, no distant towns bright enough to color the clouds, no electric beacons turning above the coast. Only the dim glow of lanterns, protected behind thin panes, and the faint silver that sometimes appears when the clouds separate above the masts. The deck beneath you rises slowly, then falls. Timbers press against one another deep inside the hull, producing low groans that travel through the entire ship. The sound is not alarming, not yet. Every wooden vessel speaks in this way. The hull bends beneath the weight of the sea. The masts lean under the pressure of the sails. Ropes tighten, blocks turn, and iron fittings shift slightly inside damp wood. To an inexperienced passenger, the ship might sound as though it is slowly breaking apart. To the men aboard the Whydah, it sounds like another night at sea. The air is colder than it was a few days ago. You have sailed north from warmer waters, following the coast of the American colonies towards Massachusetts. The Caribbean now lies far behind you. So do the pale beaches of the Bahamas, the crowded harbors, and the warm islands amongst which this ship first became a pirate vessel. The wind carries the smell of salt, wet canvas, and wood coated with tar. Closer to the hatch, there is another smell: sweat, smoke. There are no clean costumes or carefully arranged feathers, no dramatic line of men standing along the rail beneath a perfect black flag. Their clothes have been repaired too many times. Their hands are split from rope and cold water. Many have spent most of their lives as ordinary sailors, laborers, fishermen, or servants. Below their feet, the Whydah carries wealth captured too quickly to inventory. Some of the wealth is stored in chests. Some is packed into sacks. Some has already been divided amongst the crew. And some is hidden by men who do not entirely trust the rules that are supposed to protect their share. The ship carries enough to make every man aboard dream of what might happen when he finally steps ashore. A room of his own, warm food, fine clothing, land, drink. A new identity in a place where no one knows his face. Perhaps even a life in which he never again has to obey the captain of another man's ship. Yet the Whydah herself has already lived 2 entirely different lives, and neither of them was meant to last. only a short time ago, she was not a pirate ship at all. She was built in England for speed, cargo, and profit. Her name came from Whydah, or Whydah, a trading port on the coast of West Africa. It was a name connected not with adventure, but with the Atlantic trade in human beings. Before pirates walked across these decks, hundreds of enslaved Africans had been confined aboard this same vessel and carried across the ocean. The spaces below you had once held people as cargo. The barriers later removed by the pirates had been designed to control them. And the speed now valued by Samuel Bellamy had originally helped the ship's owners complete a brutal commercial journey more efficiently. This is the first truth hidden beneath the familiar image of the pirate ship. The Whydah did not begin as a symbol of freedom. She began as part of a system built upon captivity, and when the pirates captured her, they inherited not only a fast and valuable vessel, but the physical remains of what she had been built to do. Some of the men now aboard her may have understood that more personally than others. Bellamy's crew included men from different backgrounds and different parts of the Atlantic world. Amongst them were men of African and indigenous ancestry, as well as displaced European sailors and social outcasts. For some, life aboard a pirate ship may have offered more freedom and a larger share of wealth than any lawful vessel would have allowed them. But freedom aboard the Whydah was never simple. It depended upon stolen goods. It was defended with cannon, and it could end the moment a naval ship appeared on the horizon. Every man aboard knew what capture could mean: a trial, a rope, and a body left hanging where other sailors could see it. That danger helped hold the crew together. It also made tonight's apparent safety feel valuable. The warships have not found them. The treasure is still aboard, and their young captain has accomplished in little more than a year what many pirates fail to achieve in an entire lifetime. Samuel Bellamy is not yet 30 years old. His men call him Captain because they chose to follow him, and because he has repeatedly led them towards richer prizes. Later generations will call him Black Sam, not because of any dark reputation, but, according to tradition, because of his long black hair. Unlike some captains of his age, he does not rely entirely upon terror. He has a reputation for confidence, persuasive speech, and unusual generosity towards crews that surrender without resistance. But tonight, whatever qualities brought men to his side cannot command the Atlantic. Bellamy may decide where the ship turns. He may order the sails changed. For now, the colder air offers little reason for panic. It is April in New England. Perhaps a sailor pauses beside the rail and studies the black water a little longer than usual. Perhaps another tightens his coat. Perhaps someone below complains that the movement of the hull has changed. But the complaints do not spread. No alarm is raised. No one begins throwing treasure into the sea. No one knows that this is the last evening the Whydah will ever have a deck, a mast, or a captain. And there is something else the men cannot know. More than 260 years from tonight, another man will search this coastline for their ship. He will study old maps and court records. He will follow the scattered evidence left by survivors and witnesses. And beneath layers of sand, he will find objects that have not been touched by human hands since this night. Eventually, divers will raise a bell from the wreck. The metal will be worn. Its surface will carry the marks of centuries beneath the Atlantic, but an inscription will still be visible. The name of the ship, the Whydah. That bell will answer a question the sea has kept hidden for generations. It will prove that the pirates were here, that the treasure was real, and that the dark shape traveling north through the water tonight is moving towards the place where it will finally be found. But before the ship can be lost, we must understand how she was taken. Only 8 weeks ago, the Whydah sailed beneath another captain. Her decks were organized according to the laws of merchant shipping. Her owners expected her to return to England carrying profit. Then, near the Bahamas, sails appeared behind her. They did not disappear. For 3 days, the vessels continued the pursuit. The men aboard the Whydah watched the pirates draw closer, and the young captain leading that chase was Samuel Bellamy, the man now standing somewhere aboard this ship, unaware that the greatest prize of his life has less than 1 night remaining. The answer begins years before the Whydah appears on the horizon. Samuel Bellamy was probably born in 1689 in the small Devon village of Hittisley in the southwest of England. The surviving record of his early life is thin. There is no diary in which the young Bellamy explains what he wanted. No letter tells us the first time he saw the Atlantic. But the world around him offers clues. Devon faced the sea. Its ports, fishing communities, and naval traditions sent generations of boys and men into ships before they had traveled far on land. Later accounts connect Bellamy with the War of the Spanish Succession, though the record cannot trace every stage of that service. War required men. Peace released them. When the fighting ended in 1713, thousands of mariners, privateers, and naval seamen found themselves competing for fewer lawful berths. Some found merchant work. Some entered fishing fleets. Some moved between colonies. And some discovered that the line separating private war from piracy could be crossed in a single voyage. Bellamy traveled west. By 1715, he had reached Cape Cod. The local legend that later placed Maria Hallett at the center of his life begins around this period. Perhaps there was a relationship. Perhaps later, generations connected a real woman to a famous wreck. The details remain too uncertain to treat as a documented beginning. What can be followed more securely is Bellamy's next ambition. He wanted treasure. In July 1715, a Spanish fleet carrying wealth from the Americas was struck by a hurricane along the coast of Florida. Ships broke upon reefs and beaches. Gold, silver, and goods disappeared into shallow water. News moved quickly through the Atlantic world. The hurricane had scattered a fortune into water close enough to reach and difficult enough to control. Bellamy joined the search. His companion was Palsgrave Williams, a Cape Cod sailor who would remain connected to him through the rise of his pirate career. Bellamy and Williams found no easy fortune. The ocean had hidden the wealth more effectively than rumor admitted. Other men were already taking the richest opportunities. Among them was Henry Jennings, a privateer turned pirate, who had learned that stealing recovered treasure could be easier than recovering it personally. The failed search changed Bellamy's direction. He had sailed for treasure beneath the sea. He began looking for treasure that still floated. This transition was common in the years after the Spanish fleet disaster. Armed crews gathered for salvage, discovered weak authority in the Bahamas and Florida, and turned their attention towards ships. A merchant vessel was a moving storehouse. It carried food, cloth, coin, tools, and people who knew where valuable cargo had been placed. It could be pursued, it could be threatened, and if the crew surrendered, it could be emptied without the slow uncertainty of diving. Bellamy and Williams entered the pirate world through a network of captains whose alliances changed quickly. They encountered men such as Benjamin Hornigold, Henry Jennings, and Olivier Levasseur. Edward Teach, not yet universally known as Blackbeard, moved through the same Bahamian circle. Later retellings sometimes arrange these men into a clean sequence of masters and students. The real relationships were less orderly. Crews joined, separated, and voted. Captains cooperated for one prize and competed over the next. A ship could change commander without changing most of its men. Loyalty depended upon success. Hornigold was an experienced captain, but he faced a political problem aboard his own vessel. In the summer of 1716, the crew voted Hornigold out. That vote reveals the unusual structure of many pirate companies. A lawful merchant captain usually held authority from owners who remained on land. A naval captain held authority from the state. A pirate captain held authority because armed men continued to accept it. Bellamy was elected to command part of the company. His rise did not come from noble birth, money, or government appointment. It came from confidence among sailors who believed he could find prizes and divide them fairly enough to keep the company together. He was still in his 20s. He had searched unsuccessfully for wrecked treasure only months earlier. Now men placed a vessel and their lives under his direction. Bellamy's earliest independent commands were smaller than the Whydah. His company used fast-sailing vessels suited to pursuit in Caribbean waters. The Marianne became closely associated with Palsgrave Williams. The Sultana, a larger captured galley, became Bellamy's principal vessel before the Whydah. With every prize, the company gathered more guns, supplies, and recruits. Bellamy also gathered a reputation. One of the most famous speeches attributed to him comes through a captured captain named Thomas Beer, and the later writer who published pirate biographies under the name Captain Charles Johnson. Bellamy's language allowed a sailor to believe he was not simply stealing. He was taking from a system that had already stolen from him. The belief did not make captured crews safe. It did not make every act merciful. Bellamy's men used violence and threat because piracy could not operate without them. But the rhetoric mattered. It distinguished Bellamy from captains who relied only upon terror. He preferred surrender. An intact vessel carried more value than a burning one. A living crew could reveal hidden cargo. A reputation for sparing men who did not resist could persuade the next captain to lower his colors sooner. By early 1717, Bellamy and Williams had built a highly effective company. They had ships. They had experienced sailors. They had captured goods. They had momentum. What they did not yet possess was a vessel large, fast, and powerful enough to become the center of a major pirate fleet. Then a new ship entered the Windward Passage. She had completed the most profitable part of her first Atlantic circuit. Her captain expected to take her home to England. Her name was the Whydah Gally. Before Bellamy ever saw her sails, the Whydah had been designed around profit. She was commissioned in London in 1715 for Sir Humphrey Morris, a wealthy merchant and member of Parliament deeply involved in the Atlantic slave trade. Her name came from Whydah, now Whydah, on the coast of present-day Benin. At the beginning of the 18th century, that region was one of the principal centers through which European traders acquired enslaved Africans. Naming the vessel after the port announced her intended route. The Whydah was not an old merchantman adapted reluctantly for the trade. She was a new ship built to operate within it. She measured roughly 100 to 110 feet in length and around 300 tons burden. 3 masts carried a full spread of sails. Her long hull and powerful rig gave her unusual speed for a vessel able to carry heavy cargo. The cold efficiency of the design cannot be separated from the human cost it was intended to manage. The ship carried guns because the Atlantic was dangerous. War had ended only recently. Pirates and privateers remained active. A valuable ship traveling between England, Africa, and the Caribbean needed enough force to discourage attack. The Whydah mounted 18 guns during her trading voyage, along with smaller weapons suited to close defense. She was therefore fast, spacious, and already armed before Bellamy altered her. These features later made her seem almost purpose-built for piracy. In early 1716, the Whydah left England on her maiden voyage. Her outward cargo consisted of manufactured goods used in trade along the West African coast. Textiles, metal goods, weapons, and other commodities could be exchanged through African brokers and rulers. The familiar triangular diagram shown in later textbooks makes the route appear clean. England to Africa, Africa to the Caribbean, the Caribbean back to England. The lived reality was slower, more fragmented, and far more violent. Ships waited near the coast while negotiations continued. Goods moved through several hands. Captives had already been taken through warfare, raids, punishment, or kidnapping before Europeans purchased them. Families and communities had been broken long before the ocean crossing began. At Whydah, nearly 500 enslaved people were forced aboard the vessel. Numbers recorded in trade often reduce human beings to cargo entries. A total cannot show age, language, injury, or fear. The Atlantic crossing from Africa to the Caribbean, later called the Middle Passage, was one of the most lethal stages of the slave trade. The Whydah carried hundreds through it. Not all survived. Those who reached Jamaica were sold. The ship that later became associated with pirate freedom first delivered people into plantation slavery. This is not background that can be passed quickly on the way to Bellamy's adventure. It is the first central history of the vessel. The Whydah's speed, storage capacity, internal divisions, and name all belong to that history. When Bellamy later removed barriers below deck, he was physically altering spaces constructed for captivity. When formerly enslaved or black sailors later walked her deck as members of the pirate company, they stood inside a vessel built to transport people like them as property. The contradiction was present in every timber. After the sale in Jamaica, the Whydah prepared for the final leg of the commercial circuit. The human cargo was gone. The returning cargo included commodities from the Caribbean and accumulated proceeds of trade. Sources describe sugar, indigo, rum, dyewoods, ivory, and precious metal amongst the goods connected with her voyage. Captain Lawrence Prince commanded the ship. He expected to cross the Atlantic and deliver profit to the owners in London. For the crew, the homeward leg may have felt lighter. The lower deck no longer contained hundreds of captives. The ship had proved herself fast. England lay ahead, but the route from Jamaica towards the Atlantic required passing through waters watched by pirates. The Windward Passage runs between Cuba and Hispaniola. It was a natural channel for vessels moving north from the Caribbean. Bellamy already commanded the Sultana, while Palsgrave Williams operated the Marianne nearby. Together, the pirate vessels began to pursue. Captain Prince did not surrender immediately. He had a new, fast ship with guns of her own. He attempted to escape. The chase that followed lasted 3 days. For the men aboard the Whydah, those days would gradually change the meaning of every sail behind them. At first, the shapes might have been ordinary traffic. Then they remained when the Whydah changed course. They remained through changes of wind. They remained after night and appeared again with daylight. The ship was fast. The pirates were persistent. A chase lasting 3 days is not 3 days of continuous cannon fire. It is long concentration. Sails adjusted for every advantage. Lookouts reporting distance. Men sleeping in short intervals. Water and food taken while stations remain ready. Officers measuring whether the pursuers are gaining. Each sunrise brings the same question. Are they still there? On the Whydah's 3rd day of flight, the answer remained yes. The pirates had already learned the Whydah's most important quality. She could run. Bellamy did not yet know every detail of her construction, but he could see how she carried sail and how slowly the distance closed. A lesser captain might have abandoned the pursuit. Every hour spent chasing one fast vessel was an hour in which easier prizes passed elsewhere. Food and water were being consumed. The pirate ships were exposing their own positions. A change in weather could separate them. Bellamy continued. The decision reveals how valuable the Whydah appeared from outside. A vessel of that size returning from the Caribbean might carry precious metal, luxury goods, and plantation commodities. Even if the cargo proved less spectacular than expected, the ship herself was a prize. Across 3 days, small advantages accumulated. A line set more efficiently, a cleaner hull, a better angle, or a lighter load could turn a distant sail into a visible deck. The Whydah had cargo and the ordinary complement of a trading vessel. Bellamy had crowded his ships with men chosen for chase and boarding. Prince had guns, but using them effectively required the pirates to enter range. That created a terrible calculation. If he fought, cannon could damage the valuable ship he was expected to protect. If he killed pirates, survivors who later boarded might refuse mercy. If he surrendered, he would lose the vessel, but might save the crew. Merchant captains were responsible not only for courage, but for property. Owners expected resistance when resistance was reasonable. By the 3rd day, the Sultana and Marianne could threaten from more than one direction. The pirate decks carried men ready to board. The Whydah's crew could see that even a successful first volley would not end the danger. Prince surrendered near the lower Bahamas. Colors came down. Sails were reduced. The long chase ended not with a cinematic collision, but with a ship accepting that the next stage of resistance would cost more lives than it could save. The pirate vessels approached. For 3 days, the men aboard the Whydah had watched them as distant shapes. When the vessels finally came alongside, Bellamy inspected the ship. The value became clearer with every step. The Whydah was larger than the Sultana. Her timbers were new. Her cargo spaces were extensive. Her guns and sailing qualities offered exactly what his company needed. He made the decision quickly. The Whydah would become his flagship. That decision created a second problem. What should happen to Prince and his men? Pirate crews sometimes burned captured vessels after stripping them. Sometimes they released a ship with enough sail and provisions to reach land. Sometimes they forced useful sailors into the company. Bellamy chose an exchange, remembered as evidence of his practical generosity. He gave Captain Prince the Sultana. The pirate captain surrendered his previous flagship to the man whose better ship he had just taken. The gesture was not pure kindness. Bellamy no longer needed the older vessel in the same role. Giving it to Prince removed prisoners who required guarding and allowed witnesses to leave with a story of surrender followed by survival. That story could help Bellamy during the next chase. Lower your colors, and you may live. Several of the Whydah's sailors chose or agreed to remain with the ship under pirate command. Their motives cannot all be known. The sailors who remained aboard knew which lines were worn. They knew the condition of water casks. They knew how the ship behaved when pressed under sail. They knew where cargo had been placed and where valuables might be concealed. The transition from captured crewman to pirate could take minutes. A man who had spent 3 days helping the Whydah escape might now help Bellamy prepare her to chase the next vessel. The black flag did not erase memory. It redirected skill. Bellamy moved his own people and authority onto the Whydah. Weapons, personal possessions, and company stores followed. Captain Prince departed in Bellamy's former Sultana, and the distance opened. For the second time in her maiden voyage, the Whydah's purpose changed completely. She had left London as a trading vessel. She had carried enslaved Africans to Jamaica. She had departed the Caribbean as a merchant ship bound for England. Now, within sight of the Bahamas, she belonged to a pirate company. No legal document recorded the transfer. No owner consented. Possession had been decided by 3 days of pursuit and the threat of force. Bellamy stood aboard the finest prize of his career. Yet, taking a ship and using it are not the same thing. The Whydah had been arranged for merchant command, commercial cargo, and a far smaller working company than the pirate crew now filling her deck. Cabins occupied space Bellamy wanted open. Partitions below reflected the slave voyage from which she had returned. Guns needed to be repositioned and increased. The deck needed room for boarding parties. The crew needed articles, watches, storage, and authority adapted to its new size. The fastest ship Bellamy had ever captured was not yet the pirate flagship remembered by history. That transformation begins almost immediately. The work begins almost immediately. A captured ship is valuable only if she can be made useful before another sail appears on the horizon. Bellamy cannot take the Whydah into a naval yard and ask a team of craftsmen to rebuild her openly. He cannot order replacement timber from a lawful warehouse. He cannot anchor for weeks beneath the protection of a fort. Everything must be done with the tools already aboard, the skill of the men around him, and whatever quiet shelter the islands can provide. So the pirates examine their prize as sailors rather than dreamers. The Whydah is roughly 100 feet long, with 3 masts and a hull built to cross the Atlantic quickly. She is broad enough to carry a great burden, yet fast enough to escape many ordinary merchant vessels. That combination is rare. A pirate ship must be able to overtake prey but it must also carry enough men to make resistance seem pointless. It needs room for supplies, prizes, and armed men moving quickly during a boarding. The Whydah offers all of this. But first, the architecture of her former purpose must change. Below deck, partitions are taken apart. Barriers are removed. Enclosed spaces are opened. The pirates want air, movement, and access. They do not need the same arrangement that merchants used to divide human cargo from trade goods. They need a vessel that can transform from pursuit to battle in moments. Timber is cut. Iron fittings are shifted. Ropes are replaced or shortened. The positions of guns are reconsidered. Every change alters the balance of the ship. Remove too much weight from one section and the hull may behave differently in rough water. Experienced seamen know that a cannon is not merely an iron tube, but a moving mass that must be secured before the ship rolls. They know that water finds every weakness.
And they know that a careless repair made in warm, calm weather may fail when the sea turns cold and violent.
For a time, the Whydah resembles a workshop more than a pirate ship. Axes strike wood, hammers meet iron. A saw moves back and forth. Loose rope lies in coils. The smell of fresh-cut timber mixes with tar, sweat, and the faint smoke of cooking. A man calls for a tool. Another answers from below. Someone curses when a fitting refuses to move. Then the rhythm begins again. There is no single moment when the merchant ship becomes a pirate vessel. The transformation happens through hundreds of small decisions. A doorway widened. A cabin reassigned. A gun moved. A storage space emptied. A merchant mark covered. A watch reorganized. A new set of rules accepted by the men who intend to live under them. The Whydah had carried mounted guns before Bellamy took her. Merchant ships crossing dangerous waters were not always defenseless. But the pirates increase her fighting power and prepare her for a different kind of violence. A merchant captain hopes to discourage, attack, or survive long enough to escape. A pirate captain wants to close the distance. He wants the other vessel to see armed men, crowded rails, and open gun ports. He wants surrender before either ship is badly damaged. The most valuable prize is one that remains afloat. A shattered hull cannot carry treasure. A burning deck cannot be searched. A dead crew cannot explain where valuables have been hidden. So the Whydah's new appearance is designed to communicate a threat. More guns can be seen along her sides. More men fill her deck. Her sails allow her to press forward quickly, and above her, a dark flag tells approaching sailors that the ordinary protections of trade and law no longer apply. A merchant crew that had heard stories about mutilation, fire, or execution might surrender before discovering whether those stories were true. Bellamy understood that reputation could be more efficient than cannon. He wanted ships intact. He wanted goods that had not been thrown overboard. Imagine seeing the Whydah from the deck of a smaller trader. At first, she is simply another group of sails. Then she changes direction when you change direction. She gains when the wind strengthens. She remains when darkness comes. By the following morning, you can count the gun ports. You can see men standing where no merchant captain would need so many men to stand. And when the flag rises, the question is no longer whether pirates are approaching, but how much the crew will risk before surrender. For the men aboard her, the Whydah is also an overcrowded home, carrying far more crew than her merchant spaces were designed to hold. privacy disappears almost completely. A captain may have a cabin, and officers may claim particular corners, but most men sleep close to one another. The air below becomes warm, damp, and crowded. Clothing rarely dries fully. Blankets absorb the smell of smoke, salt, and bodies. Rats search through crumbs and damaged stores. Insects travel in seams, bedding, and hair. The romance of a pirate ship will later be painted in clear skies and clean costumes. In reality, even rest is filled with signals. A chorus of voices means land, sail, or danger. The ship teaches your body to listen even while you rest. Bellamy's men also have to decide what kind of society they are creating aboard her. A pirate company cannot survive if every man behaves as a separate thief. There is too much violence close at hand. The crew's articles also define shares, and a skilled carpenter, surgeon, or gunner might receive more. The captain usually received a larger portion, but not the enormous gulf separating merchant owners from ordinary sailors. This did not make the ship a modern democracy. It did not make piracy just. It did not erase coercion, theft, or murder, but it did create a structure that many sailors found strikingly different from lawful maritime life. Lawful sailors often endured harsh discipline, withheld pay, and little control over where they served. A pirate crew offered greater risk, but sometimes also a voice. For men excluded from ordinary power, that voice mattered. The contradiction sits at the center of the Whydah. The crew may share wealth and elect leaders, yet still steal from others, coerce captured sailors, and occupy a vessel built for slavery. They may speak of freedom while depending upon fear. The ship is not a simple symbol. It is a place where resistance and exploitation exist side by side. And understanding that makes the night ahead more human. The men who will die off Cape Cod are not characters from a children's story. For now, however, Bellamy has captured the finest ship of his career. He now intends to use her quickly. Every day spent hidden is a day without another prize. Every week allows news of the capture to move through ports. Descriptions will spread. Officials and governors will send warnings, rewards, and warships. Piracy depends upon speed, not only across water, but across time. A pirate captain must gather wealth before the world closes around him. Bellamy has already lived through the narrow path that brought him here. A failed treasure hunt, service under other captains, election, and repeated captures have led him here. Now the Whydah gives him the means to become more dangerous than before. When the final tools are gathered and the open deck is cleared, the ship no longer feels like a merchant prize waiting to be sold. She feels occupied. Her old captain is gone. Her lawful voyage has ended. Men who once slept aboard smaller vessels now choose places beneath her deck. The guns are ready. The stores are counted. The black flag waits to rise. And somewhere in the company, a young sailor may run his hand across newly cut timber and imagine that this ship will carry him for years. The Whydah will carry him for weeks. Before those weeks are over, she will take prizes along the coast, gather more men, and hold a collection of objects from across the Atlantic world. But first, you must learn how a pirate vessel wakes. Because life under the black flag is not a continuous feast. It begins before sunrise, with cold water, hard work, and the endless demands of a wooden machine that will sink if its crew neglects it. Morning does not arrive with a bell beside your bed. It arrives as a change in darkness. The black above the hatch turns grey. The lanterns look weaker. The air feels colder just before the sun appears. Someone calls the change of watch. Hammocks move as men wake, untie themselves and lower their feet towards the deck. There is little room to stretch. You dress in clothing that may still be damp from the previous day. Your shoes are stiff with salt. Your hands already remember where the rope burns are. Above, the ship is moving through a low sea. The sails hold enough wind to keep the Whydah traveling steadily. The deck shines where moisture has settled during the night. Before any thought of treasure, there is work. A wooden ship requires attention every hour. Water enters through seams. Rope wears. Canvas tears. Iron rusts. Food spoils. Casks shift. Barnacles and weed slow the hull. A single neglected line can fail under pressure and send canvas, timber, or a man down onto the deck. So the crew divides into watches. Some men sleep while others guide the vessel. Then they exchange places. Weather and need may change the pattern, but no one remains outside the rhythm. Even a man dreaming of wealth must take his turn near the helm, in the rigging, beside a pump or at a gun. The deck must be scrubbed and maintained, because a captain who ignores it eventually pays in sickness, damaged stores, and weakened timber. Below, pumps draw water from the lowest part of the hull. Every wooden ship leaks. The question is not whether water enters, but how quickly. Men listen to the pump and watch what rises. Clear seawater may mean ordinary leakage. Once the pumps are under control, breakfast reveals how far the reality of a voyage falls below its ideal supplies. Bread may mean hard biscuit baked to survive storage. Hard biscuit is softened in water and sometimes eaten without inspecting what lives inside it. A barrel of sound water can matter more than silver when the old supply smells of wood, algae, and decay. Drink aboard a pirate vessel is surrounded by legend. Rum is present. Captured cargo may also provide beer, wine, and spirits, but a permanently helpless crew would not survive long. For a few quiet minutes, the ship seems almost ordinary. A mug passes from hand to hand. Someone repairs a torn sleeve beneath the lantern. Another sailor leans against a warm beam and closes his eyes. Beyond the hull, the Atlantic continues without urgency. Nothing in this small interval announces disaster. It is simply life at sea, cramped, imperfect, and familiar enough for the men aboard to imagine that tomorrow will resemble today. Some pirate articles restricted lights and drinking after a certain hour. Others required quarrels to be settled away from the ship. The reasons are practical. An argument below deck can become a knife fight before anyone has room to step aside. Discipline also governs weapons. Cannon dominate the imagination, yet most captures are decided before close combat. The chase, the flag, the warning shot, the apparent number of men, the reputation of the attackers. Bellamy's company is large enough to turn manpower into a weapon. A merchant captain looking across the water does not simply count guns, he counts bodies. Faced by more than 100 pirates, a small merchant crew knows that damaging the Whydah may not prevent boarding, while resistance may erase the chance of mercy. When a sail appears, the first task is identification. How many masts? What arrangement of sails? Which direction? How low does she sit in the water? Does she appear heavily laden? Is she fast? Is she armed? What flag does she show? Flags can lie. A pirate may approach beneath colors that suggest friendship or lawful trade. Only at close range does the deception end. The Whydah alters course. Sails are adjusted. The crew's mood changes from routine to attention. Men who were repairing line now prepare weapons. If the target turns away, the pursued crew tries every advantage. More canvas may be raised. Cargo may be moved or thrown overboard. The ship may angle towards shallow water, a defended harbor or another vessel. The pirates study each response. They adjust. They wait. The Whydah's speed gives Bellamy confidence, but no ship is fast in every direction and every wind. A smaller vessel may escape where a larger ship cannot follow safely. A skilled captain may use changing weather. A damaged sail or snapped line can end pursuit. Every chase remains uncertain until the ships are close. When Bellamy chooses to reveal himself, the flag rises. A gun may speak. The recoil drives the carriage backwards against its restraining rope. Smoke fills the gun deck and moves through open ports. Once the target surrenders and the ships come alongside, a sailor carrying a weapon may fall between them and be crushed or disappear. Once across, the pirates spread. They secure officers. They guard the crew. They search cabins, holds, chests, clothing, and cargo. A captured captain may insist that his ship carries little of value. The pirates may know he is lying. Merchant records can reveal cargo. Passengers may reveal valuables. Sailors may know what the captain has hidden. Threats begin where ordinary questions fail. Bellamy's reputation for relative mercy does not mean every boarding is gentle. Piracy depends upon coercion. A man may be struck. A cabin may be broken apart. Clothing may be taken. Personal objects may disappear into pockets before the official division begins. Some prisoners may be released with enough to continue. Others may be forced aboard the pirate ship. Specialists are particularly valuable. Ordinary sailors face a decision. Some refuse to join. Some ask to join quickly. Some claim later that they were forced, because that claim may save them in court. The truth can be difficult to recover. A sailor captured by pirates lives between danger and opportunity. Joining may offer years of wages at once, but capture may mean hanging. Refusing may leave a sailor stranded or suspected, while a forced recruit may still be ordered to fight. The boundary between choice and coercion becomes blurred. Bellamy's own company grows through this process. Men arrive from different vessels and bring different habits. Some are English. Others may come from Scotland, Ireland, France, the Netherlands, the American colonies, Africa, the Caribbean, or indigenous communities. A formerly enslaved sailor may carry weapons and receive a share. A poor deckhand may speak against a captain in council. This is one reason pirate communities fascinated and frightened authorities. They challenged more than property. They suggested that sailors could reject the hierarchy placed above them. Yet the challenge had limits. The wealth divided aboard the Whydah has been taken from someone else. Some captured goods come directly from slave economies: sugar, Indigo, tobacco, and precious metals carry hidden labor within them. The pirates do not escape the Atlantic system. After each capture, goods move aboard, and the quartermaster or another trusted man records what can be divided later. There may be no formal paper record that survives, but memory and agreement matter. A crew that suspects cheating becomes dangerous. The captain cannot simply take everything and expect loyalty. Shares may be assigned, according to the articles. Compensation recognized that a wound could end a man's ability to work, while giving the crew a reason to accept danger together. Still, promises depend upon treasure remaining available. A man who loses a leg cannot spend a share that sinks beneath the sea. That fact will matter later. For now, the captured vessel is searched a final time. Its sails may be taken. Its guns may be removed. If useful, the entire ship may join Bellamy's fleet under a new commander. If unnecessary, she may be released, burned, sunk, or stripped. A prize that seems valuable can become a burden. Bellamy, therefore, operates not as a lone romantic figure, but as the center of a moving company. His authority rests upon success. As long as ships are captured, food arrives, shares grow, and the crew believes in his judgment, he remains powerful. A long failure can change everything. Pirate captains could be removed. Men who elected a leader could decide that another would serve them better. That possibility follows Bellamy even in triumph. He must appear confident because uncertainty spreads quickly aboard a crowded deck. Command is not simply a stream of orders from the quarterdeck. The reality is a continuous negotiation. Bellamy negotiates with wind, crew, captured captains, allies, and time. He is 28 years old. By early 1717, the decisions of more than 100 men are producing extraordinary results. Ship after ship stops. Cargo after cargo passes into pirate hands. The Whydah's lower spaces begin to fill with objects from routes crossing the Atlantic and Caribbean, and the deeper the treasure becomes, the more difficult it is to remember that the most precious cargo aboard may be ordinary water. A large crew consumes water, food, and fuel quickly, so pirates value fresh provisions, medicine, canvas, and timber as much as coin. Fresh produce is particularly valuable because long voyages bring sickness. They do not understand vitamins, but they recognize swollen gums, loose teeth, reopened wounds, and fading strength as signs fresh food can reverse. Disease, fever, infection, and parasites can disable a crew more effectively than cannon. Between captures, men mend clothing, gamble, tell stories, and make music. A tune moves across the deck and is carried away by wind. Men from different places recognize different parts of it. The ship becomes a traveling collection of accents and memories. One man remembers a village in Devon, another remembers a plantation he escaped, another remembers a harbor in the Caribbean, another has no intention of returning anywhere. You listen without knowing which stories are true. Sailors exaggerate, pirates exaggerate more. A small prize becomes a ship full of gold. A narrow escape becomes a battle against a naval squadron. A distant island becomes a place where treasure waits beneath every tree. But beneath the invention, certain fears repeat. Hanging, disease, storm, betrayal, and the possibility that after all the danger, another man will take your share. Yet the growing collection is also a floating archive, though no one aboard thinks of it in those terms. To the pirates, it is plunder. To the people who lost it, it may be a lifetime savings, a merchant's investment, a family possession, or proof of rank. To archaeologists centuries later, it will become evidence. A coin can reveal a route. A tool can reveal a trade. A bone can reveal a diet or origin. A pistol can reveal how a man prepared for violence. Even a simple shoe can reveal the size and movement of the person who wore it. The pirates believe they are gathering a fortune for the future. Without knowing it, they are gathering a museum for people not yet born. And one of the most revealing objects will belong not to a captain, but to a child. His name is John King. He is not a legend invented after the wreck. His presence appears in the historical record. He was traveling with his mother aboard a captured vessel when Bellamy's pirates arrived. The ship was called the Bonetta. The exact details of the encounter have been retold in different ways, but the central fact is remarkable. John was a child, and he wanted to join the pirates. Imagine the confusion on the deck. Adults understand capture as danger. A mother sees armed strangers crossing onto the vessel and fears what may happen next. A boy sees something else. He sees movement, weapons, confidence, and freedom from ordinary authority. He sees men who appear to answer to themselves. Perhaps he has heard stories in ports. Perhaps he has watched sailors treated harshly. Perhaps the black flag looks less like death to him than escape. He pleads to go with them. His mother refuses. The pirates may find the situation amusing at first, a child asking to enter a world built for desperate adults. But John persists. Accounts suggest that he threatened harm if prevented. Whether those words were spoken exactly as later recorded, the result is clear. John King leaves his mother and joins Bellamy's company. He may have been around 11 years old. Some later retellings make him younger. His precise age remains uncertain, but objects recovered from the wreck support the presence of a very small person amongst the crew. The reason matters because it reveals how powerful the idea of piracy had become. To governments and merchants, pirates were enemies of trade. To frightened sailors, they were armed thieves. To some poor laborers and young men, they represented sudden wealth. To a child like John, they may have looked like a story made real. He could not see the ending. Children rarely understand risk in the same way adults do. The distance between adventure and death seems wider than it is. John joins a company whose success appears almost magical. Bellamy has risen quickly. Ships surrender. Goods accumulate. For a child, the ship may seem like a floating kingdom, but life aboard does not bend to childhood. John cannot remain a passenger. Every person consumes food and water. Every person must justify space. He may act as a servant, messenger, powder carrier, or assistant. Young boys at sea were often given work suited to their size and experience. No part of the ship was truly safe. John learns the rhythms you have already learned. The roll beneath the feet, the call from above, the smell of weather, the difference between ordinary haste and fear. He learns which men are patient and which should be avoided. What John thought remains unknowable. The record gives us only fragments, a name, a decision, a small shoe, and the knowledge that his pirate life lasts only a few months. John King becomes one of the most haunting figures aboard the Whydah because he chose the ship without understanding how little choice the sea would later give him. His presence also forces us to look again at the men around him. Did Bellamy hesitate before accepting a child? Did the crew vote? Did they see John as useful? Did they remember being young sailors themselves? The answers are lost. What remains is the contradiction. A company that claimed a form of freedom accepted a boy who could not fully understand the bargain. He may have escaped ordinary adult control, but he entered a world where a storm could erase everyone. The Bonetta is released or continues on after the pirates take what they want. John's mother watches the distance grow. Her son remains on the Whydah. Those ordinary moments may be some of the final weeks of John King's life. Yet the script of those weeks is not only tragedy, there is discovery. The Atlantic opens around him. Islands rise and disappear. Dolphins may follow the bow. Flying fish break the surface. Storm clouds build in the afternoon and dissolve before night. On clear evenings, the stars become tools. A captain combines instruments, experience, speed, direction, and estimation. This is dead reckoning. The phrase sounds ominous to modern ears, but it describes a practical calculation. How fast have we traveled? In which direction? For how long? Currents and wind quietly introduce error. Near shore, another procedure becomes essential. Sailors lower a lead line to measure depth. Soundings tell a crew when deep water is becoming shallow, but in storm conditions, information may arrive too slowly. A ship driven by wind can cross safe distance quickly. Waves hide the shape of bars. Darkness removes the horizon. Sandbanks and channels remain invisible beneath the hull. The Whydah moves above them without seeing them. Off Cape Cod, that unseen geography will destroy her. Long sandbars extend from the coast. Storm waves break upon them. A ship driven onto a bar may strike the bottom, lift, strike again, and begin to break. A small fleet can also surround a target from different directions, but every extra ship brings complexity. At night, lantern positions must be understood. In fog or rain, companions vanish. A sudden change of course can separate the group. A captain in one vessel may see danger that Bellamy cannot. The fleet is therefore held together by trust, signals, and shared interest. Treasure helps. As long as the captures continue, men have reason to remain. The Whydah's lower spaces grow heavier. That weight matters. A ship's behavior changes with loading. Cargo placed low can add stability. Cargo placed badly can shift. Heavy objects must be secured. A chest sliding across the hold during a roll can crush a man or damage the hull. Coins are dense. Lead is denser. Cannon, shot, and metal goods add enormous mass. The pirates need to know not only how much they possess, but where it rests. Centuries later, the wreck's smallest objects will carry equal weight. The shoe associated with John King does more than prove a child was present. It changes the emotional scale of the ship. The Whydah was not occupied only by famous captains and armed adults. There were lives at different stages. There were choices made by people who who could not imagine the wreck becoming archaeology. A shoe was simply a shoe. A coin was simply money. A bell was simply used to mark time and signal aboard the vessel. No one placed these objects carefully for history. They survived because the sea chose what to bury. John may imagine himself becoming a captain one day. The adults around him may imagine the same future for themselves. We know what they do not. The future of the Whydah is not measured in years. It is measured in weeks, then days, then hours. But before the final count begins, Bellamy will gather the fortune that makes the loss legendary. To understand that fortune, we must descend below deck and look beyond the simple word treasure, because there is no single chest waiting in the darkness. There is a whole Atlantic economy broken into pieces and carried inside the ship. The ladder descends into warmer air above. Wind moves freely across the deck. Below, the ship holds heat, smell, and darkness. A lantern reveals only a small circle. Beyond it, shapes remain uncertain. Timbers curve towards the hull. Casks stand secured against movement. Bundles rest beneath canvas. Chests occupy spaces where men have decided they will be least dangerous and most easily guarded. The word treasure suggests gold first. Gold is present, so is silver. But the wealth aboard the Whydah is more complicated. Pirates take whatever can be sold, exchanged, worn, consumed, or divided. Coins come from several nations and colonies. Some are clipped, some are worn nearly smooth. Some carry the faces of rulers the men aboard do not serve. Spanish silver travels widely because empire and trade have spread it through the Atlantic. Pieces of 8 can be cut into smaller portions. Portable wealth creates a problem for the crew. Official shares mean little if every man steals privately before the division. Searches, rules, and suspicion follow each capture. A pirate may distrust merchants, officers, and governments. He may distrust the man sleeping beside him even more. For now, Bellamy's continuing success keeps such tensions under control. The treasure grows. More important, it appears likely to become spendable. Pirates do not seek coins merely to admire them below deck. They need ports, traders, and intermediaries willing to accept stolen goods. Once goods pass through enough hands, the violence of capture becomes invisible. This is how piracy connects to the same commercial world it attacks. Pirates condemn merchants and then depend upon merchants to convert cargo into comfort. They reject authority and then seek protection from corrupt authority. The men aboard did not create the Atlantic world. They seize its moving parts. Some heavy cargoes contain only timber, salt, grain, or tools, while other vessels carry passengers with little more than personal valuables. Pirates search everything because appearances deceive. Pirates search floorboards, clothing, barrels, mattresses, and books for hidden valuables, damaging the vessel as they work. The search ends with objects stripped from their owners. The pirates erase those individual stories during division. Archaeology later restores fragments. Amongst the recovered material are coins numbering in the thousands, weapons, tools, shackles, personal ornaments, fragments of trade goods, objects from different regions, and social classes. Authenticated pirate wrecks are rare because captured ships were often renamed, sold, burned, abandoned, or lost. Records were incomplete. Legend grew faster than evidence. The Whydah Bell changes that. Its inscription connects the wreck directly to the documented vessel. The objects around it can then be understood as part of Bellamy's company rather than an unidentified merchant disaster. But on this voyage, no one thinks about authentication. For now, the lantern moves across the treasure. A coin flashes. A metal edge appears and disappears. A cask creaks against its restraint. The wealth is impressive, but it does not fill the entire ship with golden light. Most treasure is dull in darkness. Silver tarnishes, coins gather dirt, jewelry becomes mixed with ordinary metal. The objects promise future freedom. That promise can hold a man below deck too long. We do not know how many aboard the Whydah will think of treasure during the final minutes. The wreck happens in darkness, noise, and confusion. The actual wreck scatters and buries material across a moving seabed. Cape Cod sand is not stable. Storms shift it. Objects sink, emerge, and vanish again. Iron corrodes and binds with nearby matter. Wood breaks down. Organic materials disappear unless protected. Gold survives well. Silver darkens. The ocean sorts the collection according to chemistry, weight, and chance. For more than 2 centuries, local people tell stories about Bellamy's treasure. Wreckage and bodies reached shore after the disaster. Some goods were salvaged. Authorities attempted to control what was found, but a coastline after a storm is difficult to police. Residents knew that wrecks could deliver valuable cargo. The boundary between salvage and theft was often thin. Whatever remained offshore became legend. Treasure hunters searched in different periods with limited success. The location was known generally, yet identifying the exact site proved difficult. The sea had broken the ship apart. Sand covered evidence. Other wrecks lay along the dangerous coast. A cannon alone could not prove the Whydah. Neither could coins. Many ships carried both. Only a direct identifying object could silence doubt. That object waits above you now, the bell, but centuries remain before it is raised. The immediate question aboard the living ship is simpler. How will the treasure be divided? Modern estimates can mislead. Purchasing power varied by place, and pirates often sold stolen goods cheaply for secrecy and speed. Still, Bellamy's success was extraordinary. His company captured dozens of vessels in a short career. The difficulty is knowing when enough has arrived. Success encourages another capture. A larger share suggests an even larger future share. The crew has survived this far. Bellamy appears fortunate. The Whydah is fast. The next vessel may surrender without a shot. Why stop now? Greed is part of the answer, but so is momentum. A pirate company cannot easily dissolve in open water. Men need safe places to land. Goods need buyers. Wanted sailors need new names or protection. A large group arriving together attracts attention. The longer they continue, the more difficult return becomes. Bellamy may also have personal reasons for sailing north. Local tradition ties him to a woman on Cape Cod, later commonly called Maria Hallett. The romantic version says that he sought fortune and intended to return to her. For now, we can say only that Bellamy knew the Cape Cod region and chose to take his fleet north. Whatever waited there, the route carried danger. April weather along the coast could change violently. The Atlantic did not care how much treasure lay below. Above deck, the crew prepares for departure from warmer waters. Stores are checked. Captured goods are secured. Water is loaded where possible. The fleet's vessels are assigned positions. The Whydah will not travel entirely alone. Other pirate craft accompany her. Amongst them is the Mary Ann, a smaller vessel whose fate will soon become tied to the storm. The company turns north. The air gradually cools. The color of water changes with sky and depth. The coastline of the colonies becomes a presence to the west. Ports offer opportunity and threat. News travels along shore. A merchant captain released by Bellamy can describe the Whydah. Survivors can identify flags, weapons, and numbers. Every captured vessel leaves a message moving in the opposite direction. Pirates are here. They are heavily armed. They are traveling north. Officials may not know exactly where Bellamy will appear, but surprise becomes harder to preserve. The Whydah compensates with speed. Repeated success has taught them confidence, and that confidence is not stupidity. Sailors must continue working despite risk. A man who imagines death in every wave cannot climb the mast, but confidence can become blindness. The Whydah has crossed the Atlantic. She has survived her first voyage. She has escaped pursuit and completed chases. She has become stronger under Bellamy. What can a single night do to such a ship? The answer waits ahead, where cold water moves across shallow sand. Before reaching it, the fleet will divide. One vessel will be wrecked before the Whydah. Survivors will be arrested. Their testimony will preserve details of Bellamy's company, and the storm will offer a warning that the flagship will not escape. The coast to the west is not a single continuous line from the deck. It appears and disappears. A low shore may remain hidden by distance. Headlands rise first. Trees form dark bands. Smoke from a settlement can reveal human presence before buildings become clear. At night, the land becomes more difficult to judge. There are few reliable lights. A fire may belong to a house, a fishing camp, or something farther inland than it appears. Fog removes scale. Sound behaves strangely above water. A bell, gun, or breaking wave can seem close when it is not. Bellamy's fleet moves through this uncertain edge between open Atlantic and colonial shore. The Whydah carries the greatest weight of men, guns, and treasure. Smaller vessels scout, follow, or carry parts of the company. Keeping them together requires attention to sail and signal. A fast flagship can easily leave slower companions behind. A captain who reduces speed preserves the fleet but sacrifices advantage. If danger appears, each vessel may respond differently. This becomes important as weather changes. The spring of 1717 has not promised calm. Cold air from the continent meets moisture and wind above the Atlantic. Pressure falls. A nor'easter can grow into a powerful coastal storm. Its winds drive from the northeast, pressing vessels towards dangerous shores along parts of New England. A ship with open ocean to leeward may run before weather. A ship caught between wind and land may lose choices. Even so, a planned meeting or destination may encourage Bellamy to remain near the coast. The exact sequence of every decision cannot be reconstructed. Storm, testimony, and legend overlap, but the broad movement is clear. The fleet approaches New England. Weather becomes violent. Before the Whydah reaches Wellfleet, another vessel connected with Bellamy's company is driven ashore near Eastham. This is the Mary Ann. She is smaller than the flagship. 7 men are aboard when she wrecks on the coast. Unlike most of those on the Whydah, they survive. Survival does not bring freedom. Local authorities capture them. The men are imprisoned and later tried for piracy in Boston. Their testimony becomes one of the ways history hears the lost company. Think about what it means for a wrecked pirate to stand in a colonial court. The black flag is gone. The weapons are gone. The sea that protected him has delivered him directly into law. He must decide what story might save his life. Was he forced to join? Did he participate willingly? Did he know Bellamy? Did he take a share? Did he carry a weapon? Other witnesses may contradict him. Captured sailors can describe faces and actions. Pirate trials depend upon evidence of intent, because simply being found amongst pirates does not always reveal choice. Men therefore emphasize coercion. They say they were pressed. They say they waited for a chance to escape. The storm may kill without judgment. A court listens first. Testimony shapes what follows. Then it decides. Several members of Bellamy's extended company will be executed later in 1717. Their bodies will demonstrate the power colonial authorities hope to restore. Piracy has threatened trade and embarrassed officials. Public hanging becomes a message sent to every sailor in port. The sea may look open, the message says, but law can still reach you. For Bellamy aboard the Whydah, the loss of the Mary Ann should be a warning. A companion vessel has been thrown ashore. The coast is dangerous. Bellamy may believe the missing vessel found shelter. He may have no opportunity to search. The Whydah has her own emergency. The wind increases. Sails that once provided speed now create dangerous force. Too much canvas can pull masts apart or drive the ship beyond control. Sailors climb to reduce it. Reefing a sail in rising weather is exhausting and dangerous. The ship begins to feel less like a home than a structure under test. Every joint carries strain. The Whydah was built strongly. That strength gives the men hope. She has crossed an ocean with hundreds of people and heavy cargo. But strength has limits. A ship that survives deep water can still be destroyed on a shallow bar. The approaching coast creates exactly that trap. Cape Cod extends into the Atlantic like an arm. Its outer shore receives the full energy of ocean storms. Sandbars lie offshore, built and moved by current. They are not stable stone landmarks. Charts can be incomplete. Local knowledge matters. In daylight and moderate weather, sailors take soundings and watch breaking water. At night, in a storm, the same coast becomes nearly invisible. The first clear sign of a bar may be white water ahead. A large sailing vessel must tack using angles. Each turn requires room. Near a lee shore, room is disappearing. The Whydah may attempt to work away from land. She may try to reach a safer line, but the storm drives her towards the coast. The crew cannot see the map we see. They have no satellite image, no radio warning, no electric lighthouse at every danger. They possess compass, lead, memory, experience, and fragments of coast hidden by darkness. The treasure below remains heavy and silent. John King may be amongst the men sheltering or carrying messages. Bellamy may stand exposed to rain, reading a sea that refuses to become clear. The crew who once voted upon their captain now depends upon immediate obedience. No command can move the shore away. The lead goes down. The depth is less than expected. Another sounding follows. Less again. The ship is entering water that can no longer hold her safely beneath the storm. There is still time before the final strike. Perhaps minutes. Perhaps more? Whether minutes or longer remain, along the coast, residents hear the storm. They know what such weather can bring. Wrecks are part of Cape life. A ship ashore may mean bodies, survivors and cargo. People may reach the beach, but the surf often prevents rescue. There is no organized modern coast guard with motor lifeboats and radio. Human figures on shore can watch men die only hundreds of yards away. Aboard the Whydah, her own success has become part of the danger. The large crew that made merchant captains surrender now crowds a vessel in crisis. The guns that made her powerful add weight. The treasure that promised freedom lies below. The altered interior may change how water and bodies move when the hull begins to fail. A pirate flagship is designed to chase and intimidate. No design makes a wooden ship invulnerable. The men know this. Still, knowledge is different from acceptance. A sailor can understand shipwreck for years and still believe the next wreck belongs to someone else. The Whydah passes another hour in storm. The coast draws closer. The final night has begun in earnest. Yet before we remain with the wind and sand, there is one story waiting on land. It is the story that later generations will attach to Bellamy's return, a woman listening to the same storm, a light upon the shore, a promise to come back with treasure. It may not be history in the strict sense, but it became inseparable from the way Cape Cod remembered the pirate ship. And like many legends, it tells us less about exactly what happened than about what people needed the wreck to mean. Long after the storm has passed, Cape Cod will give Samuel Bellamy a love story. The woman at its center is usually called Maria Hallett. In some versions, she is young and waiting for Bellamy to return with enough wealth to marry her. In others, she has been rejected by her family, blamed by her community, or left alone with a child. Some stories place her on the dunes during the storm, watching for a light from the ship. Some turn her into the Witch of Wellfleet, a lonely figure whose grief becomes something darker with every retelling. The versions do not agree. That is the first thing to understand. There is no surviving contemporary document that allows us to follow Maria through this night with confidence. The details that make the story feel complete appear mostly in later folklore. Bellamy may have known Cape Cod. He may have had personal reasons for sailing towards it. But the image of one faithful woman waiting on the shore belongs more securely to legend than to evidence. And yet, legends do not arise from nothing. They gather around places where fact has left silence. A wreck kills nearly everyone who could explain its purpose. A young captain dies carrying treasure towards familiar land. The coast sees bodies, timber, and strange objects arrive with the tide. People ask why he came so close. They ask what he wanted. They ask whether someone knew he was returning. Where records cannot answer, story enters. The Maria legend gives the Whydah a destination more emotional than a harbor. It turns a pirate voyage into a homecoming. It makes the storm interrupt a promise. It places a single person on land who understands the dark shape beyond the surf, not as a threat, but as someone she has been waiting to see. Tonight, you do not have to decide whether that story is true. People living near the shore may think of husbands, sons, and neighbors at sea. They may wonder whether an unknown vessel is already too close to land. The storm does not reveal which ship it has chosen. No one on shore can see the Whydah clearly through darkness and rain. There may be only a lantern appearing for a moment and then disappearing behind a wave. Later legend preserves the image of a figure standing where land ends. A light sheltered by two hands. A story repeated because treasure alone does not explain grief. Out beyond the dunes, the real ship is fighting for room. There is no romance on her deck now. Only water, rope, timber, and men trying to keep darkness from becoming the last thing they know. The wind no longer arrives as separate gusts. It has become the night itself. It presses against every surface. Canvas strains wherever sail remains exposed. Rain moves almost horizontally. The sea is no longer a pattern of waves passing beneath the hull. It is broken water coming from several directions at once. The Whydah rises, pauses, and drops into spaces that seem deeper each time. Men hold rope, rail, and one another. Orders are shouted close to the ear because ordinary distance has disappeared. A voice from 20 feet away may be lost completely. The lanterns that remain are nearly useless. Their light reveals rain rather than direction. Each drop flashes for an instant. Beyond that small glow, the deck vanishes. Bellamy must make decisions with incomplete information. The compass gives direction and the lead gives depth, but the chart shows the coast only in general form. The storm has created a new coast of white water, current, and sand. The men reduce sail again. A ship needs enough canvas to answer the helm. Too little, and she may lose the movement required to turn. Too much, and the wind drives her faster towards danger or tears the rig apart. This balance changes from minute to minute. A line parts. The sound is sharp even within the storm. Rope lashes free. Men duck. Someone moves towards it, clipped by spray and darkness. Another wave crosses the deck before he reaches the place. The ship twists. Fastenings loosen. The men at the pumps cannot measure the ocean. They measure only whether the level below rises or falls. As long as they can keep ahead of it, hope remains mechanical. Push, pull, breathe. Repeat. The Whydah carries 6 prisoners taken from the Mary Ann, as well as Bellamy's own company. Those men have spent the day under the control of pirates. Now pirate and prisoner depend upon the same hull. The storm does not recognize legal status. A captured captain may know this coast better than some of the men guarding him. He may have been asked to guide them. He may have refused. Whatever anger existed earlier has little value now. Navigation becomes the only authority that matters. The Whydah attempts another change of course. The helm answers slowly. Wind and wave push the bow away from the direction Bellamy needs. The vessel is large, heavily loaded and crowded. Momentum carries her even after the order changes. Men haul until shoulders burn, blocks turn, sails crack. The ship begins to come around. Then a wave strikes the side and the movement is lost. The coast remains to leeward. That old sailor's fear has now become the entire problem. A lee shore is land, towards which the wind is blowing. Open water no longer lies behind every mistake. The shore waits downwind. A ship unable to claw away is carried towards it regardless of the captain's intention. The sea ahead becomes paler. At first, the change might be mistaken for light, but dawn is still far away. This brightness is foam. Waves are breaking over shallow ground. Someone sees it. A warning moves across the deck. The lead goes out again. The depth is called. It is dangerously low. Another cast. Lower. The Whydah has reached the outer geography of the cape. Beneath her are not cliffs or visible rocks, but sand shaped by current. That makes the danger harder to read. A sandbar can lie hidden until waves reveal it. Its position changes over years and seasons. A chart may describe yesterday's bottom. Tonight's bottom is being rebuilt beneath the storm. Bellamy has choices, but none are good. He may order an anchor dropped, but a cable may part. An anchor may drag. The ship may swing broadside to the waves. No surviving record tells us every command Bellamy gives. The men who could have preserved the sequence mostly disappear with him. We know the result. We know the ship reaches the bar. We know the mainmast is carried away soon after she strikes. We know the hull is broken apart before morning. Between those fixed points lies a final struggle that belongs to the physics of sail and storm. The Whydah lifts high. For a moment, the deck seems to hang beneath you. Then the ship descends. The bottom meets sand. The impact travels upward through every beam. It does not sound like thunder. It is closer and heavier. The entire vessel gives one violent answer. Men fall. Objects move despite their restraints. A gun carriage jerks against rope. Chests shift. Timber cracks somewhere below. The Whydah has struck. The next wave lifts her partially free. Hope returns for a second. Perhaps she will cross. Perhaps deeper water lies beyond. Then she falls again. The second impact is worse because the hull is no longer meeting the bar as a complete, uninjured structure. Planks already strained receive new force. Seams open. Water enters faster. The pumps continue, but the problem has changed scale. This is no longer the ordinary leakage of a wooden ship. The sea is being driven through damage with every wave. Men who were below rush upward. The hatch becomes crowded. Those on deck shout for them to clear the working spaces. Those below fear that remaining there means drowning inside the hull. Order begins to weaken. Pirate articles, voting rights, and shares have no instruction for this moment. A man obeys because he trusts the voice he hears, because he has no better idea, or because movement leaves no time to choose. Another wave strikes. The Whydah turns slightly. Her side receives the sea. The masts swing with enormous force. Every mast is a lever connected to the hull through rigging. When the ship rolls, the weight and pressure above pull against the structure below. The mainmast cannot remain. Rigging snaps or fittings tear free. The mast begins to fall. Men see only a black shape moving through blackness. Someone cries out. The mast comes down across the deck and over the side. Its sails and rigging enter the water. Now the sea holds it. Each wave pulls upon the fallen mass, and the fallen mass pulls upon the ship. Rope that once supported the Whydah becomes a chain dragging her sideways. Men reach for axes. If they can cut the rigging, they may free the hull from the mast. But cutting wet rope under tension in darkness is dangerous. A severed line can strike like a weapon. The deck is moving too violently for careful work. Water crosses it again. Some men are carried into rails. Others disappear over the side. There is no calm water beside the ship. Anyone thrown clear enters cold surf filled with timber, rope, and darkness. The Whydah strikes again. Her bottom is being opened. The lower decks fill. Air trapped inside compartments escapes in bursts. Cargo rises, rolls, or breaks loose. The fortune beneath your feet no longer rests quietly. Coins spill, metal slides, barrels break apart. Objects gathered from dozens of vessels mix together for the first time. A cup meets a pistol. A shoe is crushed beside coin. A cannon tears free from its carriage. This is how archaeology begins. Not in a museum case, but in violent disorder. The ship's internal world collapses into a single layer of broken material. Men try to reach higher places. Bellamy remains captain only as long as command can still travel. We do not know his final words. No trustworthy witness preserved a dramatic speech. The sea rarely allows such endings. There is no clean moment in which every man becomes silent and listens. There are many separate emergencies happening at once. A gun moving, a line trapped around an ankle, a friend lost from view, a hatch blocked, a mast pulling, a wave arriving. Bellamy may be giving orders until the deck no longer exists beneath him. He may be helping cut rigging. He may be thrown into water before understanding the final break. His body will not be identified with certainty on shore. The captain who captured dozens of vessels disappears amongst his own crew. John King is somewhere within this destruction. The boy who insisted on becoming a pirate has no special protection now. His size may allow him through a narrow space. It may also make him easier for water to carry. We cannot say where he was when the mast fell. His recovered shoe and remains give no complete answer. We know only that he does not become one of the two men who reach land alive. The Whydah has been on the bar for only a short time. To those aboard, the sequence may feel endless. In later testimony, survivor Thomas Davis will describe the destruction as astonishingly fast. Within roughly a quarter of an hour after the first strike, the mainmast is gone. By morning, the ship is beaten to pieces. A vessel that took months to build and crossed an ocean is reduced in minutes by repeated force. The hull rolls farther. Water and weight take control. The Whydah capsizes. The world turns. Deck becomes wall. Wall becomes ceiling. Anything not secured falls. Men fall with it. Air disappears from some spaces and becomes trapped inside others. The sound is no longer wind alone. It is breaking timber, cannon, water, and human voices compressed into darkness. Then the sea closes over much of the structure. Some wreckage remains visible between waves. Masts, planks, and spars rise and vanish. Men cling to whatever floats. The surf pulls toward shore and then away again. Progress is not a straight line. A survivor may be carried 50 feet closer, then 100 feet back. A man standing 1 pace to the left may find a plank. A man 1 pace to the right may be struck by a cannon. A sailor may survive the first impact and drown beneath tangled rope. Another may be thrown clear of the worst collapse. Thomas Davis is a carpenter. He understands timber because timber has been his work. That knowledge may help him recognize what can float and what will pull him under. John Julian is the young mosquito pilot. He understands water, coast, and vessel movement. That experience may help him read the surf, but skill alone cannot explain their survival. The storm allows 2 lives through. Behind them, the Whydah continues to break. Treasure settles into sand. Cannon fall through deck layers. The bell leaves the world of sound. The name engraved upon it enters darkness. Above the wreck, waves continue as if nothing singular has happened. The sea does not pause for Bellamy. It does not pause for John King. It does not pause for the prisoners, sailors, formerly enslaved men, Europeans, Africans, or indigenous men gathered aboard. Their separate histories become one event on the coast. By the time the sky begins to change, the greatest pirate prize of Bellamy's life no longer resembles a ship. Morning arrives slowly through storm cloud. There is no clean sunrise. The darkness becomes gray. Rain remains. Wind still moves wreckage along the shore. The beach is covered with evidence before anyone can understand its scale. Planks, rope, broken casks, personal objects, fragments of the Whydah's 2 lives, merchant and pirate, arriving together. Thomas Davis reaches land alive. So does John Julian. Their bodies have passed through cold water and violent surf. They are exhausted, bruised, and likely injured. Every piece of clothing feels heavy. Sand sticks to wet skin. Standing may be difficult. The instinct to lie still competes with the danger of cold. They need shelter. They also know that the people who find them may recognize them as pirates. Survival has not ended their danger. Davis and Julian make their way from the beach towards habitation. Accounts connect them with the house of Samuel Harding in South Wellfleet. Davis and Julian arrive as what shipwreck makes everyone. Cold human beings needing help. News moves quickly. A great vessel has been destroyed. Only 2 men have appeared alive from the main wreck. They speak of pirates. They speak of Bellamy. They speak of a ship full of men and guns. Local officials must respond. The survivors are not allowed to disappear. They are taken into custody. John Julian's position is especially vulnerable. He is young, indigenous, and living within a colonial system that does not treat him as an equal legal person. His skill made him a pilot aboard the Whydah. His survival does not grant him the protection that Davis may attempt to claim. Davis can describe himself as a forced carpenter. A skilled tradesman compelled to serve pirates may be believed. Julian's story passes through racial assumptions and the institution of slavery. He will not receive the same path through law. Meanwhile, no body is identified with certainty as Bellamy's. A body without a name becomes easier to imagine elsewhere. A famous captain without a body can be placed in caves, distant ports, or secret survival stories. But there is no strong evidence that Bellamy escaped. The Whydah lost nearly everyone aboard. Residents gather what the sea releases. Some recover timber for use. Some take whatever can be carried before officials arrive. The Whydah's treasure begins to divide without pirate articles. The coast becomes the final crew. No quartermaster can record the shares. The greatest weight remains offshore. Coins, guns, and metal lie beneath breaking water. The storm has buried parts of the wreck almost immediately. Sand moves across objects. The ship begins disappearing at the same time it is discovered. Davis and Julian are carried away from the beach as prisoners. Behind them, the Whydah becomes a story told by people who were never aboard. The voices of the dead are replaced by the testimony of two survivors, the reports of officials, the evidence of bodies, and the legends of the Cape. That is how history often begins after disaster, not with complete knowledge, with fragments. The survivors of Bellamy's company do not all come from the Whydah. Men aboard the smaller Mary Ann also survive the storm and wrecking. They are captured and brought into the same legal world, now closing around Davis and Julian. Months pass before the trials. The men remain in confinement, while witnesses are gathered and accusations prepared. For a sailor accustomed to open water, prison is a different kind of storm. There is nowhere to move. The future depends upon words spoken by other people. Some claims are true. Pirates did compel skilled men to serve. Thomas Davis had been taken because a carpenter was essential aboard a wooden vessel. Thomas South, another carpenter connected to the Mary Ann, also argued coercion. Other defendants had stronger evidence against them. Captured crews remembered behavior. A man who guarded prisoners, carried weapons, accepted goods, or spoke proudly of pirate life could be identified. The court listens to testimony shaped by fear on all sides. Witnesses fear pirates. Defendants fear hanging. Officials fear that acquittal will encourage more sailors to join outlaw crews and later claim force. The trials become public lessons. Piracy threatens the commercial order of the colonies. It interrupts trade, raises insurance, and exposes the weakness of naval protection. Thomas Davis is acquitted. The court accepts that he was compelled to work as a carpenter. Thomas South is also acquitted. Their survival continues beyond the page of the trial, though the record does not follow every later step with equal clarity. 6 other men are convicted. They will be executed in November 1717. The Puritan minister, Cotton Mather, attends them in their final period, urging confession and repentance. John Julian does not receive the same trial. The young Mosquito pilot is likely sold into slavery. The exact line connecting every later record is not completely secure, but he appears to have lost the freedom he possessed at sea. This is one of the darkest ironies in the Whydah's history. A ship built for the slave trade is seized by a crew that includes men of African and indigenous ancestry. A young, indigenous pilot rises to a position requiring knowledge and trust. The 6 convicted pirates are hanged, but execution cannot restore the Whydah. It cannot explain why Bellamy chose his course, and it cannot recover the fortune lying offshore. For that, the governor sends another man to Cape Cod. His name is Cyprian Southak, a naval officer and cartographer sent to salvage property for the crown. What he records will become far more valuable than what he recovers. Southak reaches the Cape soon after the disaster. The weather remains difficult, and surf continues to break over the site. The ship is already capsized, shattered, and settling beneath sand. Reports describe a pirate flagship carrying treasure, and the crown has every reason to claim it. But the sea has taken control of access. Diving technology is primitive. There is no modern air supply, sonar, metal detector, or hydraulic excavation system. Heavy objects lie beneath water that never stops moving, and sand covers them faster than men can expose them. Southak recovers little compared with what was believed to be aboard. Local residents have already reached parts of the wreck before official salvage can begin, and goods scatter along miles of coast. Southak writes reports and draws a map. At the time, it is only an administrative tool. The wreck lies offshore, broken and covered. The map enters archives. The Whydah remains where it fell. Years pass, and searchers return, but the coast contains many disasters, and a cannon or coin cannot identify one vessel by itself. The Whydah becomes almost perfectly hidden, close to shore, beneath ordinary waves. Southak's map waits elsewhere in paper silence. 2 pieces of the same story are separated for more than 2.5 centuries. Barry Clifford grows up on Cape Cod, hearing stories of wrecks. The Whydah is different from most. It combines pirate legend with official records, survivors, trials, Southak's map, and a named ship carrying an extraordinary collection of goods. The problem is proving where she lies. By the late 20th century, researchers can compare charts, testimony, and shoreline changes while instruments scan the seabed. Yet the scattered wreck makes every signal uncertain. Clifford and his team return to the historical evidence, studying how the coast has changed since 1717 and moving between archive and water. Does this underwater signal match that written description? Does this layer of sand fit the wrecking process? In 1984, the team locates the wreck site. Discovery does not end doubt. A cannon or a coin could belong to many vessels. The team still needs a direct identifier. A recovered bell is carefully conserved, and then the inscription appears. The Whydah Gally. The inscription authenticates the wreck, and every object around the bell gains context. A buckle becomes something worn within Bellamy's company. A weapon becomes part of the ship's final equipment. A coin becomes one piece of plunder collected during the short pirate voyage. A shackle returns attention to the vessel's original purpose in the slave trade. The same hull that carried a crew challenging maritime hierarchy had first carried enslaved Africans as cargo. The same speed that helped Bellamy chase prizes had been valued by owners seeking profit from human captivity. Archaeology prevents the comfortable parts of the story from separating completely from the uncomfortable ones. Excavation continues slowly, and some artifacts remain under conservation for years. This pace is the opposite of the wreck. The ship was destroyed in minutes. Understanding it takes decades. Thousands of objects emerge: pieces of 8, gold dust, silver, guns, buckles, tools, tableware. A valuable coin lies beside a nail. A weapon lies beside a spoon. A child's stocking survives near the remains, connected with John King. Archaeology confirms that Bellamy's company carried great wealth, and the multinational character of the material world aboard. It cannot confirm every romantic detail about Maria Hallett, or recover Bellamy's private thoughts, or tell us the final words spoken during the storm. Evidence has limits, and a responsible history keeps those limits visible. Divers descend through green water. A hand moves sand. An object appears where no human hand has touched it since 1717. For a moment, the distance between centuries becomes very small. A museum case gives an object space, light, and a label. On the ship, none of these things existed. A coin was part of a share. A pistol was a tool of threat. A shackle belonged to the machinery of captivity. A shoe protected a foot from wet timber. When the objects return, they carry both their original use and everything that happened after. Bellamy's men once believed value was something they could divide. 3 centuries later, the greatest value lies in what the collection can teach. The Whydah reveals piracy not as an isolated fantasy, but as part of the Atlantic world, connecting London, West Africa, the Caribbean, and the American colonies. She began as a commercial instrument built for one of the most brutal trades in human history. She became the flagship of a young pirate captain whose crew challenged some of the hierarchies around them. She carried a fortune gathered through violence and died within sight of shore. 2 men survived. One was acquitted. One was likely returned to bondage. The ship disappeared beneath sand. A map remembered where. A bell proved her name. Nothing in that sequence is simple enough to become only an adventure. Now the storm has moved beyond the cape. The waves are lower than they were beneath the surface. Sand moves slowly over the Whydah. The cannon no longer threaten another ship. The coins no longer promise another life. The bell no longer marks time. Above the wreck, morning becomes day. People walk the shore and search. Officials write names. Survivors are carried towards prison. And you have followed the story. You have stood on the deck while the coast remained hidden. You have descended into the hold where wealth from several continents lay in darkness. You have watched the ship change from merchant vessel to pirate flagship. You have met the child who chose adventure, the carpenter forced into service, the young pilot who knew the sea, and the captain whose success lasted only a year. There is nothing more you need to hold. The dates can drift away. The ship has reached the end of her voyage. The watch has changed for the final time. Imagine the sea now without storm, a slow movement above hidden sand, moonlight reaching only the upper water. Far below, the wreck rests beyond sight. Not complete, not empty, simply still. The Atlantic moves over it with the same rhythm that existed before Bellamy was born and will continue long after every recovered coin has darkened behind glass. In, out, rising, falling, the sound reaches the shore as a low, even breath. You do not have to follow the next wave. You do not have to wait for another sail. The lanterns have gone out. The deck is quiet. And for tonight, the keeper will remain here beside the water. You may rest.